That's pretty good. I feel kind of shitty right now. And although I'd like to note, this is the best acting the games have had probably ever, which is great because they really wanted to make the story good. So, all right, I will say, I think the last two boss fights were actually not like super great. I enjoy my little Galaga thing, you know, but it's a little sad that it's like a really easy QTE that pops up after. I don't know if that has anything to do with time or if they want, and that's why I'm not saying it's not a huge disappointment on that regard, but like, I think they were trying to focus more on the spectacle of the final fight once you got past that part, because it was the hardest part of the game by far. Because they were trying to make it more somber because of Sage's sacrifice. So probably a me complaint, not like a, you know, from the game kind of thing. I think they were trying to focus more on what was happening and not a fight. And I think that even is why the fight before that was kind of easier, because even Sonic was like, that was it. He was a cool looking fight and he was still fun, but the first three Titans are wild, crazy fights. So I definitely don't think it's like a tonal shift that's bad. It's just, it feels weird for the tonal shift to be in the middle of like a boss fight. But this is also the first time they've done like this level of crazy stuff, right? I still really enjoyed that fight. There was something I was trying to get working, and one thing I couldn't understand, maybe, you know, until I find out more about the fight, I don't want to say too much about it. But the world is designed really well overall, and the fact that you're constantly getting thrown to other things. So here's the review. You're getting kind of thrown to things constantly that are either upgrades, memory tokens, the babies, even sometimes getting thrown to cyberspace levels, to even Chaos Emeralds, and then as you do, and Island Mysteries, and you know, I know that everybody jokes, oh, this is the Dark Souls of whatever, right? But I loved Elden Ring, and this game kind of did weirdly a similar thing, where you see something and you're like, what's that? And the thing leads to more things, and you get rewarded every single time you do that. I do agree, it's by no means to the extent of, you know, exploration versus reward that like Elden Ring had, because Elden Ring is like one of the best design games ever made kind of stuff, right? But this still throws you to stuff constantly. You constantly get to do little challenges, even if some of them are kind of automated, which is something that I hope because it's much less automated than like Forces was. So I really hope that they build upon that. And because like there's a few parts in that fourth island where you get to do these wall runs that are actually super sick, but it's like, I mean, barely at all. So I would love for them to build upon that more, because it's something they could really find some really cool stuff with that. The boss fights could be slightly harder, but Sonic games aren't necessarily super hard, so like they were just fun and engaging. First one was literally, Giganto was still a tutorial, but very fun, like, holy, what's going on kind of fight, you know, and then Wyvern's more engaging, and Knight was arguably the most engaging because of the way you have to actually take him down was super cool. The cyberspace levels are definitely the weak part of the game, but not, I don't want to say they're bad so much as aspects of them are bad, which is Sonic controls weird when he is boosting, and he is very slow. But the levels are cool design, and there's little references to like even stuff from Sonic Adventure, Adventure 2, whatever, you know, sprung all over there. Literally one of the levels has a bunch of Radical Highway stuff, which is really cool. One level's like got a bunch of Metal Harbor stuff, Green Forest, Frog Forest, stuff like that. Sky Rail. I did not play all of them. We're gonna actually do that after this review. So spoiler again, I did love the game, but I'll give you my score here in a second. Final boss fight was cool because I liked the Galaga thing, but it was weird that it goes from Galaga to like QTE, not a fight. But again, I think it was trying to emphasize what was happening. I feel like I may as well have just had the cutscene though and not interact with it. But it was definitely still visually neat, and I liked the end saying stuff, and I kind of liked that it was almost like a weird dark moon. So visually it was still very cool, and the things it says was great. And cyberspace stuff, so they're fun to run around through and to speed run. There's really good level design there, and even the 2D ones are feel even weirder, and the drop dash like doesn't work in the 2D stuff, which is actually really weird. But the Lightspeed dash works, and it works every time you use it. It's great. I can't believe they brought it back and made it super good. There's some really cool stuff to do with it. I hope they keep it and build upon it. Sonic kind of has a bounce attack. I think that the speed he goes in this game with a real bounce attack like Adventure 2's would be awesome. So I hope that they do that again. And I'm trying to think of anything else to say about cyberspace, because I already pretty much said all I gotta say about the open world. It's great. The fishing minigame is a cute little side thing. I don't know, cyberspace is fine. It's not bad. It's much better than Forces. Forces was like, bleh. It still has its issues, and they should be built upon if they want to continue that kind of thing. But I think it's a good little side thing. You don't even have to do it. It's just the fastest way to get the emeralds. And honestly, I think they're worth doing because they're fun and there's nice shortcuts and they're going to be wild for speed runs, yada, yada, yada. And controls, if we're going to talk about controls, in cyberspace, they're only okay. But in the open world, Sonic controls great. Stuff is responsive. You can turn really tight. His jump could be a little bit tighter, but it's great. It's just not the adventure style jump. I think they should probably do that with how fast he can go anyway. You can boost off of inclines to do really cool stuff. The air boost is something I'm not sure how I feel about yet. The fact that it's like this weird little, it knocks you kind of up and you don't go as far as like Generations and Unleashed. But it serves its purpose. It works. I got used to it. It's not a bad thing. I'm not sure how I feel about it, but it's different and it works. The wall running stuff is great. I wish they would build upon that a little bit more than they actually did in this. Let's see. Homing attack is a little weird, actually, because on enemies, it's like there's this big animation and it's a little odd. I don't think it's a bad thing, but it's really noticeable in cyberspace because you're supposed to be going zoomies everywhere, right? The new crazy maximum boost is super fun. What else is there to say about controls, really? I feel like I didn't have to use the slide, but the drop dash being here was cool. Sonic does not move hardly at all when you drop dash, though. Like, he goes fast, but he cannot, like, adjust. I don't know how deliberate that was supposed to be, but drop dash being there is cool. It functions in the open world. It weirdly doesn't in 2D cyberspace stuff, but you can do it in 3D cyberspace stuff, which is great. Graphics, it's obviously the best-looking Sonic game. They finally, really wanted to improve upon what they did visually with Unleashed. Stuff looks great at night. Stuff looks great during the day. Stuff looks great when it rains. Blah, 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 blah. There's actually a lot of good animation Sonic has, even though there's definitely some that are just still carryovers from Forces, but it's not like we first thought it was going to be with that. And now music. Oh, it's probably some of the best Sonic music out there, even though not all of it is constant jam up like crazy stuff, but the boss fight themes are literally out of this world nuts. Was not expecting them. The cyberspace musics are all bangers. They're all super good. The overworld music is really pretty, and it sets the tone for when you're just kind of exploring, and all the fight themes are really good. I didn't get to listen to like every fight theme. I don't think I fought every type of Guardian or every type of enemy, but there's like a generic enemy fight theme, maybe related to Planet, but I think it might just be like a generic battle theme. And then each Guardian, or type of Guardian at least, had like different music, like the ones that you chase through the air and grind on, all had their own themes and stuff, which was really cool. And on enemy variety, I definitely think there was great enemy variety, even though there was admittedly one enemy that I was kind of like, this is the same shit. It was the Shinobi ninja, whatever. The one that shows up on Chaos Island that was Shinobi was virtually the same thing. And the one that shows up in the final island was kind of the same thing. He just has like one extra attack. That was like the only enemy that disappointed me, but the little dudes go from cannon fodder to actually being able to mess with you a little bit. There's a bunch of weird gimmicky minigame enemies all over the place that are super fun. Like, I love the grind rail ones, were super, super cool. And Sonic can just animation cancel like he's a Devil May Cry character almost. Like, I don't know, it's great. And again, I'm considering for the first time they've gone this far with this, they did a great job in that regard. The story was really good. I do see... there was one weird part, and it was when Sage was thinking about Eggman. It went on a little long, and it was kind of like weird because we were just watching scenes of stuff we've already seen from within the past like hour of cutscenes. It's like, that's your best memories of Eggman? Like, maybe make something to make it more impactful, like maybe show some of when she was created. Don't know if that's time related or what, but in the end, like, especially with the egg memos, which are top tier little side collectibles, go check those out from Big if you have not. Those kind of added a lot more to that scene, but that scene was definitely a little jarring. Jeez. Yeah, all the characterization of everybody was like perfect. Everybody acted the way they should in the ways that they should in every situation that either was called for being serious or being funny or both. Emotional stuff. There were great moments and references too, but they weren't just references to be references, which I'm okay with, fan service in a comment or something from a character, but they were full on like great references when Tails is like, I'm useless, I'm always hiding behind you and scared or whatever after Infinite and blah, 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 blah. I felt so bad. And Sonic was like, well, who saved Station Square? And who broke me out of prison? That stuff was great. All the character interactions were great. The story was great. Character interactions, I think, were actually a little better than the overall story. But there were some cool, like the Chaos Emeralds are actually from space. and whatever was left of those people, the ancients, turned into chaos. That's cool, and it obviously is great to tie in the universe together. Uh, the pop in is pretty bad still. It's better than like the previous stuff we saw, but it wasn't as distracting as I was expecting. In the end, it's still bad and it's still a thing that shouldn't be present, so it's definitely a negative. So speaking of negatives, I guess we could talk about that, but on the course of like the pop in, the frame rate was pretty consistent. I saw a few drops, but it wasn't anything major. But the game ran great and looks great. So negatives, the pop in is probably the most honestly blatant one. It's either that or just the cyberspace stuff in general being not as just because it's not as good either is part of the issue. But the fact that it's not as good mixed with its weird controls is a genuine negative. And then when you level up like speed and ring count, you can't do it multiple times and you have to like over and over again. So that's another negative. And the same thing with buying stuff from Big. You have to mash to buy instead of like, how many do you want? And then it makes this really, really obnoxious noise, which is super unfortunate. The length of the game was good though. I didn't feel like forced into it being long. You just play the game and get stuff. Some of the open world stuff, mostly the platforming stuff. There's some that aren't super great. There's that crazy pop in. There's some that aren't super great. Like some of them are just fun and very Sonic-y, but some of the ones that I'm specifically referring to are the ones that feel kind of more automated. They feel a little Forces-y, which is not good. But it is a minor thing. It doesn't happen that often. Most of them are just fun to do. Holy shit. But as a whole, it's just, you know, you go around, you do stuff, you find stuff. Then it is all interconnected and brings you to other stuff. So it works and it's great. But there are some that aren't super good or are kind of automated, which is a little unfortunate. I think that's really it. I feel like the fact that it just lets you explore and figure stuff out is good. There was a part where I was getting a little frustrated trying to find tails, but I wasn't mad at the game. I was just trying to like, why can't I figure out where to go? So I think that it's fun. I think it's great running around. The story is really good. There's definitely some issues with cyberspace. Some of the RPG stuff doesn't function as concisely as it should. But I feel like Sonic consistently gets, you know, more. That's funny that you can do that. More powerful. He gets faster. He can take more hits, whatever. Enemy variety is very good. There's only like one enemy type that I kind of was like, I'm done with that. Like, because it doesn't do that much that's different. But almost everything else got like new variations where there was a good variety of the enemies. Is there anything else that's negative? Oh, there was a mini game. I don't want to say what it was as a spoiler just in case. But there was a mini game for Tails in his story that I had to do that had a ridiculous score necessary to do it. So I was like, that's not great. Like the mini game was fine, but the score you needed to get for the mini game kind of sucked. Oh, is there anything else to talk about Sonic Frontiers? I don't think so. I think that might be the review. There are a few things, you know. The lack of momentum doesn't even, I don't really notice it just because how fast Sonic is, even though you can actually get momentum when you drop dash, like case in point. Look at the speedometer when I go downhill. It actually went up. So that's kind of neat. I'm trying to find like a slope to better show it though. It's like he gets momentum, you know, which is actually kind of neat. So, like I said, mostly positives for sure. Like, this is a good formula. They should build upon it. Cyberspace is fine. They should just make it better. I think maybe you could add more currencies or something. Just gotta improve some stuff a bit. Definitely more skills, because I think the skills are fun and great, but you can unlock them kind of early. So the growth of combat doesn't really like change that much, but it is fun. I think the combat is, I'm considering the first time they've done this, combat is a plus to me. I think it's good. I think it could be a bit better, but it's not bad. And the open world was done really well overall, despite the pop-in and some occasionally strict, you know, stuff that was very simple to do. But as a whole, minigames are just minigame, fun little distractions. You get power-ups, you get rewards, yada, yada, yada. And the story was really good. The music was great. The characterization of the stuff was actually better than the story. All the characters were perfect. So I loved the game. I'm super happy with it. But I do think because of some of the stuff that falls a little short, just a handful of things that fall a smidge short, things that are not as good. Nothing is inherently bad. I don't think there's anything that's actually like genuinely bad besides the pop-in. So considering this is the first time they've done all of this, I feel like it, for me personally, I can't go with a 7 because it is good, but I think a 7 for me is too low. I'm actually going to give the game an 8 because I'm going to give it that's the final review, 8 out of 10. The pluses are the open world is fun and engaging and rewarding, and it brings you to, you know, you get a bunch of stuff every time you do anything. Open world is great. Cyberspace is well designed, but has some issues. But cyberspace as a whole, I'm going to argue is a positive, if a slight positive. The boss fights as a whole, because I think the last 2 weren't super great, but the boss fights as a whole are awesome. I think all the enemies and enemy variety is actually fantastic. Like, I really appreciated it. And I don't know, they did a good job with the enemies. Like, that's one of the better parts of the game, funny enough. The combat is great. It could be a little better, but I think, again, first time doing it, it's great. The mini games are cute and fun. There's much more positive here for me than negative by far. And I really enjoy it. I want them to build upon this. I hope that the thing about the characters all doing stuff means that they'll be playable in the next game on their own adventures or whatever. I think that'll be awesome. But it's visually great too. They really, I mean, they found a really great formula that I hope they build upon. And again, personally, I think a 7 is just too low for the first time of them doing this. I think that considering how well it just works, how well everything is connected overall, not Elden Ring level or anything, but the fact that you go a place and it brings, or you go to a thing and it launches you to something else or brings you to it, is great. And it does that constantly. I think that it does a good job of just being like, hey, you need to explore to progress the story. I think it does a good job of that. I don't feel super forced to, because if you really don't want to, you just go fish with Big or not do the challenges and just find things to Psyloop, which reminds me, Psyloop is also a great new ability, and the quick Psyloop is like one of the coolest things they did with it. Oh, I guess one other thing that I didn't get to mention is there is a little bit of an input eating thing that happens sometimes. Sometimes I get stomped because I double tap circle when doing, like, you know, the dash circle attack. It's not a big issue, but it has caused some funky stuff. But I think that's just sometimes games, even Elden Ring had like some input eating, but again, great stuff. I love the way the wall run works. Psyloop's amazing. Yeah, I agree with Simon completely. So again, my rating might have been a 7 due to its drawbacks, except there's so much that's just new and their first time doing this kind of stuff to this extent, especially. And the Coco were cute and fun. So I have to give it an 8 by the end. I do think that the final stuff was not, it was pretty and it was moving a bit, but it was a little disappointing. Last 2 fights weren't super crazy amazing compared to the other 3. Music was awesome, obviously, and the end was talking the good shit, but it was a little weird to me that it just like turned into Galaga only. I was expecting phase 2 to like crack open the end and we were gonna fight some weird thing about it, and you know, but again, in the grand scheme of the game, not really a big thing, just a slight issue. So final verdict is definitely an 8 out of 10. I think it's a great game. I think if you like Sonic, you'd like the game, especially the story. All the acting is great. Characters are great. Like, they interact the way they should. Knuckles and Sonic got a little rivalry going on. Like, they're just dude bros, and Sonic is super sweet with Tails and Amy, but in different ways. And the characters all, you know, say things about like their past or their future and present in ways that they absolutely should. So, thought it was great. But yeah, it's a great game. I think if you're hesitant about it, you should get it. And just enjoy it. I don't know, it's great. The music's great. Controls, I mean, I can't believe I can just do this. Even the camera is pretty good, 99% of the time. There's occasionally, again, it's that open world stuff. Occasionally there are some weird camera things. I don't even think it was like a negative, so that's why I didn't bring it up in the review part, because I'm going to post the review as like a separate video. Sometimes there's ones that try to shift the camera for you, and if you walk into it before it shifts the camera by doing like a different part of it, the camera won't shift, and then it's practically undoable, if not just awkward. But it's very minor thing. They just got to build upon that kind of stuff, man. They just need to work on it and make it better, and I think they could really find a really good balance of everything and just make an even better game, and I really hope we have other playable characters next time. So yeah, that's it. 8 out of 10, all that good stuff.